Hello, I'm Eric Houston, and this is Press Play, a show about movies. And I just saw Project Hail Mary. This is a brand new movie, so, a little bit uncharted territory for us here at Press Play. From directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller, starring Ryan Gosling. The plot of the movie is that something is eating the Earth's sun. Little microscopic organisms have shown up, and they are eating the sun. And it appears that they are eating all of the suns in the galaxy. And if they're not stopped, Earth is going to be in pretty big trouble. And so the scientists of Earth launch a manned expedition to the one star in our galaxy that is not being eaten by the microorganisms to see if they can find out what's going on. That's the basic plot. And at this point, and that's, I think, all pretty knowable from the trailer. I should say that there's going to be some light spoilers throughout. I'm not going to reveal the end of the movie or anything like that, but I'm going to reveal some plot details. So if you're looking to go into this as cold as possible, you might want to stop the video now if you haven't already. So anyway, Ryan Gosling is a school teacher who gets sent on this mission. When he arrives at the star and comes out of hypersleep or whatever, he discovers that he is the only still living crew member. But he's not actually alone, as in short order he ends up teaming up with a small rock-like alien called Rocky. Rocky does not speak English, and they have to team up to figure out what's going on. Rocky is a big swing in the movie, and I think one of the better ones. He is, if I'm not mistaken, fully CG, but he's pretty well realized. A big thing that I liked about Rocky is that he's a truly alien. As a long-time watcher of Star Trek and Star Wars and all of those, I, like a lot of you, am used to movies where the aliens are just humans with stuff glued to their foreheads, more or less. It was fun to see an alien who was anatomically very different from us. Rocky he's a little guy. He's sort of irregularly shaped. He has, I think, 4 rock-like limbs. And he sees through echolocation, and he speaks through like little chirps and gestures. So a really fun part of the movie is watching Ryan Gosling and Rocky figure out how to communicate with each other, and then how to problem solve together, and even to live in each other's environments, because Rocky breathes a completely different atmosphere than we do. So all of that stuff is a lot of fun. And I would say that for the most part, this movie is a lot of fun. This is a fun, big, blockbuster, good time. Good time at the movies. It's a buddy movie. It is pretty much all about Ryan Gosling and Rocky. It does jump back and forth through time, though. So while we spend, I think, probably the bulk of the movie at this new star trying to solve the problem of the microorganisms, which are called astrophages, we bounce back every so often to see how Ryan Gosling got involved in the mission and the buildup of the scientific exploration on Earth to deal with all of this stuff. And that's all pretty interesting. I don't normally like it when TV shows and movies do that trick where they jump back and forth into the past. Personally, the way I always feel when they do that on shows is that I can't wait to get back to the present of the movie. In this case, the action of Ryan and Rocky, because that's the now, that's what's happening, that's what's propelling the plot forward and what I want to see. I am less interested in spending a lot of time dwelling on the things that happened before the movie started. But, that's probably a personal thing. As a result, I'm not a huge fan of the TV show Lost, where that's every episode is in between the island and life events of the people who have been stranded before they got to the island. I don't care about what happened to them previously. I do a little bit. I'm happy to have a flashback scene, but I get personally pretty bored with excessive flashback scenes. That said, despite what I felt like was a relatively obvious and not particularly interesting twist element at the end of the flashback sequences, I thought that they actually worked pretty well here. There's a lot of fun stuff in the flashback sequences too. There's more science stuff as we get to watch Ryan Gosling learn and study and understand the astrophages. There's other buddies in the past too, so that when we're not with Rocky, Ryan Gosling is hanging out with Carl, his Secret Service agent, liaison bodyguard guy who's very funny, and with Sandra Huller, who is playing sort of the mission leader, mission commander, and she's a really neat character too. I liked her a lot. She's very no nonsense, very determined, and I enjoyed the energy that she brought to the movie. So like I say, I don't want to get too detailed into the ins and outs of this one because it is a brand new movie and I want you to experience it for yourself. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun time at the movie. It was funny. It was touching. There were some genuine surprises and some genuine intensity too. It's maybe a little long, but that's true of just about every movie that's been released in the last, 20 or so years. What else to say about it? I want to point out, so this is Project Hail Mary. It's based on a book of the same name by Andy Weir. He's the same guy who wrote The Martian. And I think if you enjoyed The Martian, you're going to like this. I was certainly reminded of The Martian throughout, both because of going in knowing about Andy's involvement and just structurally. I mean, they're both sort of lone nerd makes big scientific discovery movies. And those can be a lot of fun. The Martian is a movie that I liked okay when it came out, but I find it's one that I revisit pretty regularly. It's a really easy watch. And I think that Project Hail Mary is going to slot itself into that same space. There are some similarities to the story that, I don't know a lot about Andy Weir's work. I read The Martian. I haven't read this. I hope that he has other work where he's branched out a little bit more. And also, not to be whatever, but I would enjoy seeing a movie like this that's about a woman sometime. And because both this and The Martian are about lone scientists who are both men, there are not a lot of parts for women in the movies. This movie, Project Hail Mary, has Sandra Huller, and she's great, and a very small role for, I cannot say her name, Milana Vintrub, I think, the AT&T lady. But she doesn't really get to do a whole lot. The Martian, I think, has a little bit bigger roles for Jessica Chastain is in that, and I think Kate Mara is in that, and they're pretty fun, but they're also not given heaps of things to do. These are relatively minor criticisms, though. I really enjoyed this movie, and I would full-throatedly say that I recommend it. I think you should watch it. I had a really good time. Now, it's also a movie that I wanted to point out has been directed by Phil Lord and Chris Miller. These are guys that I've been fans of for a long time. In the filmmaking world, they made 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street and the Lego movie. I don't remember if they did the second Lego movie. And as producers, they're involved in all sorts of stuff, like the Spider-Verse movies. On TV, they did that Son of Zorn show about what's basically like He-Man's deadbeat son. And they were behind the show The Last Man on Earth, which I really enjoyed. The one where, he's the last man on Earth, right? In movies, though, it's really interesting to see them take on this sort of movie, to see them take on a big sci-fi blockbuster. And a big part of why it's interesting is that they've sort of been here before. You may have heard that this is the same duo that had been hired by Lucasfilm to direct Solo, the Han Solo movie that ended up being directed by Ron Howard. Well, obviously that was kind of a big and complicated story. And as I understand it, and this is coming to you with no additional research beyond what I remember from the time, Lord and Miller were directed to make Solo, which made a lot of sense. Their track record is that they're two guys who are very good at mixing action and comedy, who have strong storytelling capabilities, and I think this is crucial, were successful in making movies work that should never have worked. There's no reason that a movie reboot of 21 Jump Street starring Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum should have been any good. And yet they were able to turn that into a really funny movie, right? The same with the Lego movie. I mean, now, now that we've had successes like the Lego movie and like Barbie, the idea of, we made a movie based off of a toy seems acceptable. But when the Lego movie was coming out, there was certainly a lot of feeling like, well, there's no way this is going to be good. And yet, at least that first Lego movie is very good. Similar story with Solo, right? Hey, we're making a Han Solo prequel. Look, no one likes Star Wars prequels anyway, and now you want to make one about Han Solo before he was cool? I don't know about that. So, why not hire the guys who have a track record making things work that shouldn't? And that made a lot of sense. And they shot, as I understand it, most of the movie. And then somebody saw what they were doing, some producer or something, came in, sat down, watched some of the footage, and they went, oh no. This is not the movie we want at all. Now, what that movie was, I don't know. And I am dying to see it. The footage exists somewhere. I don't think there's any way Disney releases that footage anytime in the near future. Maybe someday, because Disney does like money. And so I am dying to see what Lord and Miller did with Solo for a couple of reasons. One, and probably the biggest, is Project Hail Mary. Here it is. These guys set out to make a big budget, studio, blockbuster, sci-fi, and this is important, buddy movie, right? Whether you've got Ryan Gosling in Rocky or Han Solo and Chewbacca, human alien buddy movie. And here in Project Hail Mary, they did it. And I think it's the thing that works the best about Project Hail Mary, the thing that's the most unimpeachable, is the buddy element. It's the heart of the movie, and they really work that well, right? So to have been able to see what they could have done with Han and Chewie, it's such a missed opportunity, And the other reason I want to see their version of Solo is that Solo, as exists, because what happened is somebody came in, got mad, presumably because Lord and Miller were doing a little bit out there stuff and some stuff that was a little sillier, I think, than Disney expected, because that's what they do, is they're good at injecting this stuff with comedy, but not like over the top, like Monty Python comedy, like really human comedy that fits in the story. But somebody saw it and didn't like it, and I'll speculate more on that in a minute. And so then they decided, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring in Ron Howard. Workman director Ron Howard. Now, has Ron Howard made some movies I like? Sure. Absolutely. Is Ron Howard a skilled director? Yeah. But is he a guy who brings like a lot of personal style or excitement to a movie? In my opinion, not really. He's a craftsman for sure, but I don't think he's an auteur in any stretch. And I don't think he was able to bring Solo to life. Now, the Solo that exists is fine. It's perfectly watchable. It's a solid down the middle, probably 3-star movie. If we're getting back to my usual recommend, don't recommend, watch Solo. But I wish I could tell you, man, it's a fun movie? Solo. It's funny, it's heartfelt, it's all the things that Project Hail Mary is, and I can't. Because Ron turned in what turned out to be a pretty bland movie. Now, do I think that that's all Ron's fault? No. Like, he had to work with, certain effects and things that had already been done. The special effects train had already left the station at that point. He had to work with, as I understand, I think he used a little of Lord and Miller's footage, although I don't think a lot. And and he had a constrained time frame. He wasn't working on the story. Now, does Ron Howard make a lot of sense? Sure, he's got a history with Lucasfilm. Probably my favorite Ron Howard movie is Willow, a movie that I like quite a bit, but which, if I'm being completely honest, is maybe not as good and as special as I think it could have been in the hands of a more skilled, more personal director. But a movie I like a lot. So he's got the history with Lucasfilm. He's sort of a Star Wars and George Lucas adjacent guy, American Graffiti and all of that. He's got a record of, making movies that, make money. At the end of the day, though, when I heard that Lord and Miller were being fired from Solo. My gut instinct, and I have nothing to back this up, is that I tend to blame the screenwriters. Now, normally screenwriters in Hollywood do not have that level of power, but Solo was written by Lawrence and Jonathan Kasdan. And Lawrence Kasdan is a guy whose career involves, he helped George Lucas, to what degree he wrote him, it's unclear. But he did the screenplays for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Whether he was polishing up work that George did or whether he pretty much took the ball and ran with it and George, rubber stamped it, that stuff is sort of unclear. But he was the Star Wars guy, and he did the script for like Raiders of the Lost Ark and tons of other movies. Jonathan Kasdan is his son. So he's a guy who's coming into this project with as much ownership over Han Solo as anybody working at Lucasfilm at that time had, right? Because he wrote or was involved in writing some of the best Han Solo stuff in Empire Strikes Back. Also some of the worst Han Solo stuff in Return of the Jedi, but some of the best. And then we also have this wrinkle of now this is a family affair that he's writing with his son for whatever reason. I think that Lawrence Kasdan wrote a very straightforward Han Solo adventure movie, very much in the vein of those like 70s Han Solo paperbacks, Han Solo at Star's End and whatever. And I think Lord and Miller came in and they wanted to make something a little more fun, a little more exciting, and they wanted to add in their sense of humor to things. And my guess is that Lawrence didn't like that. I feel like it was he, and this is all guesswork on my part, and if I'm wrong, please tell me. Hey, I would love nothing more than for Lawrence Kasdan to call me up and say, no, that is not what happened. I would also like nothing more than to see Lord and Miller's footage and to be able to compare the two movies. That's a dream that may never happen. But anyhow, so yeah, I think he saw it and he felt like that Lord and Miller weren't taking his work seriously in the way he wanted it taken. And he did what he could to get them off the project and find somebody who could deliver a straight down the middle Han Solo movie. A movie that does still have jokes in it, but which are absolute clunkers. Probably the best example of that being how Han Solo gets his name. Do you remember this from the movie? That he goes to like an Imperial recruitment station and they ask him his name and he says, my name's Han. And they say, what's your last name? He says, I don't have a last name. I'm traveling alone. And the guy at the recruitment station is like, yeah, you're traveling solo. Yeah, Han Solo. And in the movie, it is the dumbest thing you've ever seen in your life. It is the biggest eye roll. Do I think that Lord Miller maybe could have pulled that thing off? Maybe, especially if they were playing it as subverting expectations and making it kind of funny that like this guy who we've idolized got his name in the dumbest way possible. It's a pretty tall ask. So I don't know where that came from, but it's a big clunker. And I think the only people who could have really made that movie sing were Lord and Miller. And it's a shame because there's stuff to like about Solo. First and foremost, that movie's got a crazy good cast. Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo is actually, I think, pretty good. His performance is a little miscalibrated throughout the film, but I don't think that's his fault. He was definitely working on a version of the character with Lord Miller that he had worked a lot of time and, done a lot of development on that then got thrown out by Ron Howard. So that his performance seems a little unsure and a little uneven, I don't really think is his fault. You also have Emilia Clarke, who I always like. She's, Game of Thrones. She's in the movie. Doesn't get a lot to do. Would have liked to have seen what Lord Miller did with her. Same with Thandie Newton, a very cool-looking character who I suspect in another version of the movie had familial ties to the, Boba Fett-style bounty hunter at the end, but that's more speculation on my part. But Thandie's in it. Love Thandie. She gets nothing to do. Woody Harrelson gets some stuff to do, but I think the way he's used in the film is also a little miscalibrated. So anyway, that's just all to say that if nothing else, and I think it is a lot else, if nothing else, Project Hail Mary is proof positive that Lord and Miller had this movie in them. it is proof of concept that their solo, I think, could have really been something special. So while it's a shame that we don't have their solo to see, at least not yet, we do have their Project Hail Mary, and I thought it was really quite good. All right, that's all I've got time for right now. Please stay safe, watch movies.